So before we dive into part 2 of this episode, I got to ask, did you catch part 1? If not, hit pause real quick. You'll want to start from the beginning to get the full effect. The link to part 1 is right down in the description below. Go ahead, catch up, and we'll be right here waiting for you, ready to dive into part 2 when you're all set. It's worth it, I promise.
So what is your long-term vision for what you're doing? What's the legacy going to be for you?
Oof. I always tell people this at 65, I want to be that eccentric professor, right? That pretty much the guy where like people are flying around the world to come listen to give a lecture. That is the ideal goal, right? But like the type of eccentric where I come in without shoes and I go, why do we wear shoes, right? What's the marketing behind? Let's now dig into the last 100 years of marketing and branding. That I, like you, Beverly, I'm a big nerd about this stuff. For me, the ability to be able to be on stage, I always tell people when I'm on stage, I feel quite invincible, right? Because I'm talking about something that I'm very passionate about and I'm speaking to people that I can actually help. And the exciting thing is when I see the audience just go, oh my God, that is the most beautiful feeling in the world. And then over time, I think I'll put out a book, right? I think I want to follow a little bit in your footsteps here, right? Focus on some of this book. It would be nice to put something out there. But at the moment, it is speaking at a lot of sort of corporate events and conferences about the marketing and branding.
I wrote my book in 7 days.
No way. That is actually, no way. Yeah. Okay.
You have ideas in your head right now.
Yeah.
I just took 7 days.
Yeah.
And I wrote a chapter. Like I wrote like the outline first and then I did the chapters. And again, simple. You don't overthink it.
Okay.
And it is the quick guide. So it's only 90 pages.
Bang. Yeah.
And I just wanted to sell myself I could do it.
Bang. Just proved
to myself that I could do it. And even to my customers and my clients, like you don't have to overthink it. Like all the things you're talking about, 7 days, I took it as a challenge. And I said, I'm going to do it. My husband is active duty Army. He was away for a week. And I literally wrote the book while he was gone. I published it, self-published, like nothing fancy. But I really wanted to prove to myself as a perfectionist that you don't have to overthink this. And I've had so many people tell me, it's so simple. It's so good. And maybe that's exactly don't overthink it. I'm like, do it.
Just do it. I always tell people it's such a huge, powerful shift that happens between I want to versus I am.
And I've done. And I've.
Yes. It's, I want to be a writer. And it's then write a chapter. You are now officially a writer, right? You may not be a good one, right? But it's so long as you're in the I want to be, what you always do is criticize yourself, right? I want to be a writer, but I'm not ready yet. I want to be a writer, but I don't have the skills. Versus I am a writer. I'm not a great one or a good one, but you're a lot more focused on growing. You're a lot more critical about the work, right? I am a writer. I've written this. I could make this better, right?
Exactly.
So you're not pointing the spotlight on you. You're pointing the spotlight on your work. And then versus I'm done, right? I have done. I've written one book.
Mm-hmm.
Like now you're a lot more forward thinking, right? It's, cool. Okay. Now here's what I didn't like about that book. Here's what I can do with the next one, right? You're a lot more, again, you did something unsustainably. Mm-hmm. There's no way you can map out every year 7 days to just sit down and write a book. Not scalable, not sustainable at all, right? But now that you did it, now you can look back because you've seen every step of the process once. You can go back, okay, now if I was going to do it again and I want to do it in a scalable way, I know what matters here. I'm not going to get distracted by what I think matters here.
Yes. So now I know I need like a workbook element to it. And now I want case studies to go along with it to show the example that I'm talking about, to give an example in those moments so people can have a real concrete visual of what that looks like. Yeah. And that's actually one of the reasons why I started the podcast too, is I want case studies from actual entrepreneurs, real people, real entrepreneurs who've struggled, who've been inspired, who've overcome all things. So to me, it actually unlocked other ideas of how I can grow my business and what that looks like from that perspective. And the feedback from people too has been really powerful because it also tells you what they need. It's a research opportunity even of what the market's missing in many ways. Yeah. So don't be eventual. Just do it.
Just do it. You know what? I'm going to take the advice tonight. I'm going to sit down. I'm just going to get started.
I love that. That's so much. And when you write it, you have to let me know because
100%. 100%.
I want to see it for sure. And again, don't get in the way of yourself. Like it doesn't have to be perfect. Yeah. You have a lot to offer. So please share your wisdom. Yeah. And there, even if this is my thought too, even if it was like 100 people who read my book, it was 100 people who needed to hear the message at the time.
There's always, have you heard of Kevin Kelly's 1,000 fan theory?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. For the audience, Kevin Kelly was one of the co-founders of Wired magazine. And he has this theory, it's 1,000 fans. He was like, we didn't need to sell millions of copies. We needed to be able to get 1,000 people on board to pay $10 a month. And that's enough to bring in $120,000 a year. That's for your first year. For any individual, that is a great amount of money to be making. And the idea is you become very simple. You only need 1,000 fans, right? Not 1 million. And in your case, Everly, you figure out what that number is for you. If that's 100, that's all you really need is 100 people who are paying attention, who understand who this has helped. You have hit a very important milestone.
Yeah. I think my obviously I have bigger goals at the end of the day, but for this particular exercise in my life, this is what the goal was. It was a learning process. It was a get over myself process. There was so much to learn and glean from just doing it. And at the end of the day, if 100 people read this, that to me would make me happy. And it's been more than that. So that is the thing that I think most business owners, everybody struggles with, is that inertia of, and you're so about this. So I'm like, you have to do it.
You're right. And we often say it's impossible to take your own advice sometimes, right?
Yes.
Versus we're going to do this. We're going to do this for sure.
Yes. Okay. So I have a lightning round.
Yes.
And it's fun. So I hope we talked a little bit about it earlier, but you have many years of experience. You have talked in front of so many people. You've worked with hundreds of companies. I'm assuming, and maybe I'm wrong, but it's all about connections and word of mouth and some of that. How do you create and maintain connections? How are you intentional? I love the idea that it's not about all the universities. It's one university and going to it and figuring out how to talk to that person, whatever that looks like, the intentionality of it. Maybe talk a little bit about that. How do you create and maintain connections?
Yeah. I think very frank conversations. At the end of the day, everyone is trying to do something that they're passionate about, or they have there's some goal that they're trying to achieve. And often I've found, for example, for a conference host or for a conference, someone who books speaker for conferences, or let's take the example of the college. So for example, if I'm speaking to the college director, my question often is, what are your goals for the center of entrepreneurship here, over the next semester? Right? What are some things that I can tie into? So that I'm leading with this idea of, look, what my goal is to come in and speak. And what I want to be able to do is use that for content to then leverage to then blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to be very upfront with you about it. That is what I'm trying to do here. Ergo, I'm asking you to allow me to film my entire talk. If you can give testimony, if there's a word of mouth that you can share for me, if there's anyone else you could recommend me to, I'm being very upfront. Look, this is what I am looking for. Vice versa is, what is it that, what are your focuses? And then trying to find ways to where I can plug in, right? If someone says, oh, we really want students to start coming into the center more often. Then during my talks, right, plugging that in and being like, by the way, y'all, if you enjoyed this talk, they've actually got XYZ thing coming up over the next days. Oh, by the way, have you all met the coordinator of the office here? Have her come out or them come out to introduce themselves and share some information. So I think what has helped, to be honest, is figure out what at point, and oftentimes it's very point blank. I tell people, look, there's no politics, there's no formality here. What are you trying to do? Here's what I'm trying to do. Let's find a way to support each other. And I've often found, I think it also depends. It's a two-way street, right? If you meet someone who's a little bit more reserved, they might not open up. But what I found for the most part, 80% of the people or 90% of the people, when I say this, it's a relief, right? Because there's no game to be played. It's just, hey, okay, I have this job. I really want to look good in front of XYZ person. Can you help me do that? Okay, great. You help me do my thing. When I see that person, they ask me about how my experience went, I'm going to shout you out, blah, blah. It's sort of, we're going to just support each other.
Chirag, if your business, if the speaking side of what you do had a voice, what word or emotion would resonate from its core?
Dynamic.
Why dynamic?
So dynamic for me is just, you won't always remember what I've said to you, right? But you could follow up. You could watch my videos. You could learn a lesson. What I do want you to leave is energized, just excited. I had my favorite insult I've ever gotten was a videographer who quit on me, who said, I'm sorry, Chirag, I can't keep covering your events because what you're expecting me to do is run around. You run around and I can't keep you in frame. And I love doing that, right? I love jumping off the stage. I love coming into the crowd. I love interacting with people, calling people out when I see that they're writing something. I'm like, cool, what did you write down? In the middle of the talk. But for me, this is, I want you to believe in yourself when you leave. I can do this. I can look at things in a simple way. And ergo, I want to be the most dynamic. I always tell people, I'm going to be the most dynamic speaker you've seen at this conference. And that's a bar that I hold myself.
One of our core values is dynamic.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
We have three core values. It's honor, dynamic, and it's fusion. And dynamic for us is we are innovative. We are looking at different ways of doing things. We are dynamic with each other. We don't let ourselves get too comfortable. There's a lot of things about dynamic that I think are important and being a dynamic speaker. So when you said dynamic, I was like, oh, I love it.
I've got it.
Such a fun word.
Absolutely.
I love it. Okay. So you have lots of experience in all of this, but who or what, is there a podcast or a book or an entrepreneur or a couple that have really left like that mark on you and how you frame what you do now?
I'll do two ways to answer this. One, I think more on the philosophical side of things, or like not the concept side of things. Clayton Christensen, there's Peter Drucker, right? These are some of these older business management thinkers and authors and professors who've done absolutely phenomenal work and really led the way to this idea of focus on the person. So person-led marketing, consumer-led marketing. But then I guess more on a more on a philosophical, more on a personal level, a friend of mine actually that I love shouting out, Simran Kaur. She's the founder of a program called Girls That Invest. And what she started off was just very simply, she's from New Zealand. She started during, I believe it was during the pandemic or perhaps a little earlier than that, started investing in the stock market. Realized that this was something that was never really taught to her. I think a really great story that she often shares is when she would go into a banking institution with, say, maybe her father or some sort of partner with her. The interesting thing was all the pamphlets always had men shaking hands, right? It was never really a woman's hand that you would see there. And what she noticed is people would talk to whatever male counterpart was with her at that moment. And she realized that the financial literacy amongst women, right, was often incredibly low, right? So we often had divorcees or widows who would be left with almost nothing because they had no understanding of the financial system or they had nothing that was or allowed to stay in their control. And so it became her singular mission. I'm going to try to educate as many people as I can about investing, about financial literacy. And she started off by creating content, very simple content, right? Beverly, what we were speaking about, this idea of just do it, putting out content just every single day, just putting out a post, sometimes the simplest post. But for her, it was like the message is what matters more than anything else. She started a podcast that has now become one of the most famous financial literacy podcasts in the world. But again, her thing was like, I put stuff out there, I listen to everything, and I tweak every episode. I'm a huge fan of her book, the Girls That Invest book. The biggest feedback I've heard people give is just that it's laid out in plain language that makes them not feel like idiots. Right? It feels like they're having a conversation with her. And I think this is an individual who's mastered that ability to take complex topics, turn them into very conversational tone. And so when you say who's had an impact on me, oftentimes I actually have 2 copies of her book. And she's a friend of mine, so obviously signed copies, right? I'm like, give me signed. I'm selling these on eBay ASAP. But I find myself often going back to her books and like reading how she's worded certain things to be like, oh, Chirag, come on. Keep it simple. Keep it simple.
What's one unconventional tool or app that's become a secret weapon for your success, do you think?
Man, Canva. I gotta be honest, Canva, right? I think I live and breathe Canva. I use it for everything. I use it to create my speaker packets, to create my slides and all. I just love the intentionality. I think they have done phenomenal when it comes to building out a tool that allows you to do some pretty complex things with it in a very simple way.
Super accessible to the average person.
Super accessible.
And it's still evolving, which is great. They're constantly adding new abilities to it.
Yeah.
How do you keep your entrepreneurial spirit alive? What do you feed it?
Oof. Good question. I often tell myself, irrefutable confidence, arrogance is belief in oneself without results, right? Confidence is belief in oneself because of the results. So it's often, I think people, when they say, oh, I'm shy or I'm not that confident as a speaker, for me, it was just literally going, okay, confidence is just proving to myself that I can do something and having irrefutable points of proof. Then let me just go out and speak as much as I can. And eventually every single talk, just being able to say, oh, I've spoken there, I've spoken to that audience. And this is the qualitative or the quantitative feedback they provided. That's irrefutable proof to myself, right? Okay, cool. I am a speaker and I can be good at what I'm doing, or I am getting better. And so I think when you say, how do I keep the entrepreneurial spirit alive, is anytime I feel lost, I force myself to commit to do one thing and I get it done. And it becomes just another little tool, right? Is a little memory, a little snapshot that I can put away in this little box. Whenever I'm feeling down, I can open it up and go, oh, look, I've done this. And no one can take that away from me. Ergo, I know I have irrefutable proof that I've done something and I can continue.
Entrepreneurs are notorious for moving the goalposts constantly.
Yeah.
And we don't often look back and say we did all of these things and how important these things were to the process.
Exactly.
So I think like looking back, having that file is amazing that you remind yourself, I did that.
Bang, bang. Exactly.
There's a lot of chaos and uncertainty and movement and new things and new trends and all of that. How do you keep yourself grounded? If you're a speaker, I feel like you can get a little ungrounded pretty quickly.
Beverly, I can't tell you the amount of times people will be like, oh, cool. So we love that you do the marketing stuff. By the way, can you speak on AI? And you're a little tempted, right? You're like, you know what? Maybe I should just speak on more stuff. And I mean, I use a lot of AI. I'm fortunate enough to be exposed to a lot of AI in marketing, but it's not something necessarily I want to speak on, at least at this moment in my life. It is very easy for that scope. The trends and everything. I look at some of the oldest brands in the world, right? Some of the most iconic brands in the world. Say, let's take a look at a MasterCard. If MasterCard, one of the largest, like well-known brands in the world, can fixate on one, like the priceless campaign, right? One of their longest running campaigns, what I think we're up on quite a few years now. But if they can fixate on one thing, and MasterCard has gone through many, like it has gone through the .com era, it has gone through this whole rise in the metaverse, crypto, all this stuff, the rise of internet marketing, newspaper marketing, everything, and that messaging still remained the same, priceless. It just shows you how, regardless, the trends will come and go. But as long as you have a very consistent message that you care about, you will simply adapt. Right? So find that consistent message first, then go explore all these trends. But which is that's what helps me focus is anytime I feel like I'm chasing after trends or I'm getting overwhelmed, I go, okay, cool. What is the core message? All of these are just a unique way to get your message across. And what people tend to do is when they get caught up in this, they go, I need to have a different message for every single one of these trends. I just want you to have one message. Then all of a sudden, everything else seems like fun and games. Because, oh, cool, I can share this message in a video on TikTok. I can share this message in a blog post on my website. I can share this message as like a funny advert in like a local magazine. But the messaging never changes. And ergo, I still feel grounded.
If Chirag speaks, prowled the animal kingdom, lived as an animal, which creature would it embody? And why?
Oh, that is a good one. That is a good one. I would, at this point, I would probably say, I'd say a monkey. Just swinging through the vines. Just swinging through the vines. In fact, I think that's the greatest way to probably describe what I'm doing on stage as well. Just swinging through the vines. Chirag Speaks is, the goal is to just keep moving, to try a bunch of things, to say, at the end of the day, the monkey will explore the jungle, but it'll look for very specific things. It builds up knowledge over time. It learns from its the lessons that it's created, but there's a large sort of idea of, okay, let's go explore, but come back to the group kind of mentality. Same way with me is there's a lot of, let's just go and explore as many speaking opportunities as I can. Let's try out a bunch of things. Let's stay dynamic. Let's stay limber and then do things unsustainably if we have to, but learn from them so that eventually you can.
This episode is brought to you by BC and Associates Marketing's holiday special, 20% off our Brand Spark package. As 2024 comes to a close, it's time to set your business up for an incredible 2025. With our Brand Spark service, we'll help you ignite your brand by sharpening your message, refining your visuals, and giving you the tools to stand out in a crowded market. And for a limited time, you can save 20% when you use the code ALLIN20 at checkout. This offer is only available until October 31st, 2024. So don't wait. Start the new year with a brand that's clear, compelling, and ready for growth. Whether you're struggling with unclear messaging or visuals that just don't reflect your business anymore, our Brand Spark is designed to get your brand back on track. Visit bcandassociatesmarketing.com/brand spark to book your deep dive session today and use ALLIN20. ALLIN20 at checkout to save 20% before this offer ends. Let's ignite your brand and make 2025 your most successful year yet. What is your favorite quote that you tell yourself often?
This too shall pass. Right. I'm not sure who said it, but I do remember Tom Hanks sharing it early on, sharing it in an interview once. I just remember how powerful. You have a great, amazing day. Remind yourself, this too shall pass. Right. So don't get too cocky. Don't get arrogant. Don't make promises you can't keep. Similarly, if you have a bad day, a bad talk, a bad experience feeling yourself, this too shall pass. Allow yourself to feel what you're feeling, But remind yourself that it's just time will heal everything. Time will make everything.
What do you think are the 3 most important ingredients for the recipe of your success?
Ooh, curiosity, for one, right? I love learning as much as I can about these random things, collecting these little stories. The public speaking, I guess, as my ability, like my willingness and desire to speak to people all the time. It started off small with the clothing store to eventually speak on stage. And the last thing I think is reflection. Quite a bit of reflection, right? It takes you can have the knowledge. I can go up and speak. I think we often find you can pick up the skills to play basketball. You can go and play basketball, but if you're not sitting back and looking back at am I actually growing? What are the skills I need to develop? What is something being objective about yourself, not critical, but objective about it, I think has been very helpful. My ability to be able to look back, go, okay, that didn't work the way I wanted it to. Let's tweak that now and it's been very helpful.
So that is the end of the lightning round.
Yeah.
But I have the last segment is like looking back, but then looking forward a little bit.
Yeah.
So looking back at young, like maybe 5-6-year-old Chirag, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, I didn't want to be an architect, I think, at one point. Lucky for me, my parents said no to that, right? It's funny because there was even like a specialized high school specifically for architecture. And I was like, I want to be an architect no matter what. And luckily my family was like, keep your options open. You're young and you change your mind every 5 minutes. But I think that was one point. But I think from a young age, actually, I've often said that I do enjoy, I want to be I've often enjoyed public speaking growing up. So for me, this doesn't feel like a decision that I was recently made. This feels like a homecoming, right? It just feels like I'm following the passion that I set out. And I think for little Chirag, it was the small things. Like we were fortunate enough, like I mentioned, the History Channel stuff. I grew up watching the History Channel, right? And I was always like, oh, wow, it'd be so great to one day be on there. To now get to be there. And then ideally, hopefully, my hope is to show other South Asian, younger, this generation, look, like we too can be on something like a History Channel, right? It's exciting. I'm hoping that there's someone out there, a young Chirag out there that's also, oh, cool. I want to do what that guy's doing someday.
Representation matters.
Oh, it does. It does.
Very, very much so. If you could give 18-year-old Chirag advice that would have saved you time, money, headaches, heartaches, maybe not about heartache, but in business specifically, what advice would you give him?
Yeah, start. Beverly, we're in a unique position where 18-year-old Chirag was the one who had started. That was around the time I'd entered college, right? And that was when I really started doing a lot of this content and putting stuff out. At the time, I remember there was an entire year we wasted where I was obsessed with the idea we were going to make YouTube videos, but every video had to be perfect. So we wasted months getting the perfect equipment and everything. We filmed a ton of episodes that never made it out of the Google Drive because it was like we changed the background, we changed the look. And I look back often and I'm just like, and I just started posting. Because when I did finally, a few years later, start just posting on TikTok, like I said, it's not quality versus quantity, it's quantity for the sake of quality. I was putting out a video every single day. We were refining and fixing and getting better and better every single day.
Yeah.
As opposed to just spending time on the most useless stuff because we didn't get started. So I think the big thing is find the simplest version of what you're trying to do and just put it out there, Chirag. You'll grow and fix it later.
What piece of actionable advice, if someone's listening to this podcast right now and the episode's going to end and something that could give them the most impact with the least amount of resistance so they could go do right now to improve their business.
Yeah.
What would you tell them?
I would say if you map out the customer journey ASAP. The benefit if you're an e-commerce business is go to your whatever analytics software you use, Adobe Analytics, Google Analytics, whatever your website's built on, Wix or Shopify, whatever it is, go into the analytics. And I want you to look at literally each one of them usually has user journey sections, right? That'll show you exactly how many people have gone from home page to product page to checkout page, blah, 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 go on. And if you don't have a business like that, but you have a more of a services business or non-e-commerce business, then I want you to sit down and just map out that process for yourselves and try to assign some numbers, right? Where am I losing people? Once you break down the steps to these granular, each decision that your audience has to make, I want you to ask your question, like what questions are they asking at that?
Mm-hmm.
And your job essentially becomes, can I answer those questions in a way that make them feel comfortable to move on to the next step? Or do I essentially need to eliminate this step so it gets out of the way?
We have a free download for the customer persona and customer journey that I will put in the show notes as well for our listeners if that's something that you want to explore further. But I would actually add a little bit.
Beverly, if I can, I think, and then the second step after that is reach out to Beverly. Right. Reach out. Once you've mapped this out, reach out to Beverly and the Sparks and Ignite team, right? Is figure out, and then figure out how to create an action plan.
I'd appreciate that. That's very generous of you. However, I would also add to even the customer journey side of it is that it's not just the actions that they take, but how do they feel at every step as well? I think the differentiator, I'm customer obsessed. Like, I think you need to be customer obsessed. What would the customer do in this scenario? But the customer feel, what do they feel at every step as well? Because if it's just a transaction, I think that there's danger in that because then you become a commodity. But if you make them feel something along the journey, then you become something far bigger and more to a person than just a next step. So in the customer journey that we provide, there is a feeling section as well. It just goes a little bit above. But I think that the power in understanding who your customer is and what and their journey will change everything for you and how you then what message you need to give then and there's so much clarity in that process for sure.
Absolutely. You hit it right on the dot.
Thank you so much for the shout out on that. I appreciate it.
Of course.
You're so generous in that. So before we go though, let's share with our listeners where they can learn more about you, what you're up to, any projects, like how do they engage with you and get more information if they want to maybe hire a speaker or something like that.
Yes, please, everyone. The number one place, chiragspeaks.com, right? It'll have everything that you could possibly look for from all my social media content, right? If you are not ready to book yet, or you're just interested in some of the stuff I'm saying, please follow along on social media, right? We have TikTok, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you are someone who wants to get in contact as far as bringing me into, we do conference talking, keynote speaking, webinars, as well as one-on-one consulting as well, and workshops. So please, if you are interested, check out chiragspeaks.com or reach out on LinkedIn and send an email.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been super fun.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me, Beverly.
I love to hear all your expertise and knowledge. And I think our listeners can really create a lot of value from that. And certainly we speak a very similar language when it comes to clarity and focus and how important that is to your business. I hope our listeners can take these valuable tips and use them right away. But if you have any questions, certainly reach out to Chirag or myself. We are more than happy to work with you and answer questions you may have.
Absolutely.
But until next time, and more inspiring conversations on the Spark Ignite Your Marketing podcast, keep sparking and igniting. Wrapping up another episode of Spark and Ignite Marketing. For your weekly dose of inspiration, join our community on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok for behind the scenes and exclusive content. Until next time, keep the spark alive and stay inspired.